844-339-1122.
Julia Roberts! Julia Rob!
Now back to the Bears Den with Drake Toll.
Welcome back into the Petty Clinic Low T Bears Den. Happy Jersey Thursday, everybody. And I say happy, and we are happy, but I tell you what, right now Baylor Baseball down 9-3 against Kansas State and Oklahoma City in the Big 12 tournament. Up 3-0 to start the game and 9 unanswered for KSU. Now we're joined by Terry Hunt, the Baylor Baseball PA guy. Terry, if anybody knows a thing or two about Baylor baseball, it's got to be you, and I didn't expect to see this version of Baylor today.
I was hoping to see game 1 or game 3 with K-State, not game 2, and this has a whole lot of similarities of the middle game of that series just a few weeks ago, where K-State just had the number, and they have so far. I'm not writing it off yet, but boy, they sure look like they have the number right now.
Terry, in that game against Kansas State, looking back to that game 2, I mean, it really wasn't bad for Baylor until about the 8th, 9th inning when, like you said, late in the game, things just took a turn. What do you remember about this game that compares to this one?
Well, I never second guess any coach's decisions. I mean, my cell phone never rings from the coaches, calling me going, Terry, what do you think? I know where the mindset is on making changes, but during the season, we've had times where we get into a bumpy area and you kind of let the pitchers come out of it a little bit. And it's the same thing. We put what we think are sure pitchers into the game, and it only takes a couple of mistakes. The unfortunate part is the mistakes happen when you've got multiple players on base. So you don't give up a single, you give runs up in that deal. And that's exactly what it looks like today from what it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I tell you, Terry, it was Cam Cayley that started that game 2 against Kansas State and threw really a gem. Him against Jordan Wicks, who's maybe the best pitcher in the Big 12. Those guys went toe-to-toe for a long while. And then you go bullpen, and with COVID, injuries, the nagging stuff, just seems like Baylor's bullpen hasn't been there yet.
In the past, we talked about this the last time you and I talked. In the past, I think Coach Rod is kind of let them get into a bind and then let them pitch out of it. And, yeah, Hayden gave up a couple of back-to-back home runs today, but he's pitched out of some jams before. And again, at that late in the game, plus you look at your bullpen, what the anticipation and what you've seen in the past, and for some reason it just didn't catch on today. I don't know what it was.
Terry, how much of this right now, as Baylor now has a runner on third base after a solid little triple, and they're going to get Kansas State is going to get out of it a 9-4 score. But Terry, how much of this is maybe Kansas State just being hot right now, winning a series against TCU, sneaking a couple wins? I mean, they should have won yesterday against TCU. This K-State team is oddly good right now.
K-State is a lot better than they looked on paper. Even when they came to Waco and played a few weeks ago, it wasn't supposed to be those high-scoring games that Baylor won. I thought those games would be a lot closer. I didn't think it would be like game number 2, all of them, but I thought they would be a much closer game. And, playing TCU the way they did, I mean, they were a couple of swings from winning that game, a couple of swings away from winning that game. And it just didn't happen. But they are a much, much better team than I think they look like on paper.
Terry, in the moment, 17 runs in 1/2 innings seemed really good. It felt really, really good. But you think that may have put a bit of a target, some bulletin board material up for Kansas State going into this one?
Whether or not anybody said anything to them from Baylor or they got any text or emails from fans, I think previously I want to say that one of the managers told me that the year before last, I believe, they had 15 runs was the highest in a half inning, and that was against K-State. So I think K-State just went, look, we're tired of this. and mentally, I'm sure they went into it with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and said, look, we get any kind of a mistake on the pitcher's part, we're going for it. And I think they were all given green lights just because of the situation. Plus, they're good. I mean, they were hitting good.
Terry, I know one of the things that bodes well for Baylor has been some of the late game magic. They love to score in the first inning, and they love to score in the eighth inning. Even I look at games like Texas, they lost at home, where you look at the eighth inning, the bases are loaded. You're down by 1 or 2, and you got a shot to come back and win it. Baylor, talk about maybe their ability to come back, at least put up a few runs late in these games that could give them a shot to at least make things scary for Kansas State today.
Well, that's one of the things we talked about before as well, Drake. We talked about in the past couple of years, Baylor would get up and then get down, but they never were out. They never went up, we're down by 4, whatever. Let's just give it up, we're down. They hung in there and knew the bats could come alive, and they didn't lose any confidence. I'm not as positive about that now after going 1-5 in the last 2 series. And the way that they have played the first 2 rounds here in the Big 12 tournament, I worry that there's a little bit of confidence shaking going on right now when they did drop the 5 of the 6 games in that last 2 series. I don't want to say, because coach can only bring so many back, but you have 13 seniors, and those guys had a lot to look forward to for this last time. And you want the leadership to still be there. I hope it is still there to keep them going. But you just look at there's some kind of a level of confidence. It looks like it's dropped as we've gone through those last 2 series.
Terry, as I look at the pitchers that Baylor has seen the last 2 days, Mason Montgomery for Texas Tech is the same guy they faced off with in Lubbock, and they beat him. He took the loss in Lubbock. McCullough today, who started for Kansas State, he took the loss in Waco in the Friday night game, only went 2 1/3 and allowed 5 earned runs, 5 walks. And now these 2 guys have really shut down the Baylor lineup pretty effectively. What is different when you're facing a guy the second time around, and if you've already hit him, you've already done well against him, why the success lacking? Is it because that confidence seems like it's waning?
Well, I don't know if it's as much of the confidence, but I think you probably caught both of those guys on off days. That wasn't the norm for those pitchers. Those pitchers for Tech and for K-State were not in the habit of giving runs up early. And I think that was more of an off day. I think what you're seeing with some of the pitchers that we've seen, not just today, but yesterday, and even in the past couple of series, you've seen those guys get back to what is more of a norm for them. So I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary for them to be hit on early in previous games, as much as it is they may have been having an off day. And I think that again, K-State's a great team. I think we're seeing K-State play some really good baseball right now.
Terry, along with that, with K-State playing as well as they are, Oklahoma catching a bit of a hot streak here lately. Obviously, Oklahoma State picked their season back up going into the end of the year. Kansas just refuses to be swept by anybody, and they're the worst team in the conference. They take one game from every team they play. How well, or what does that show, I should say, about the Big 12 and how deep this conference is?
I think it's been like this in a number of other sports, and you're starting to see baseball. I mean, it's the old adage, on any given Sunday, on any given game day, you look at teams. I mean, take TCU. It's TCU. Come on, really? They're going to lose to K-State and get that close? Look at Texas. I mean, there's so many of them from top to bottom that can battle any day of any week, and you don't know who's going to come in to win. Hey, on paper, this one is strong. But if everybody puts it together, and it doesn't have to be a perfect game they put together, it's just got to be a really good game. And I think the competition in the Big 12 baseball right now is getting so strong that everybody throws the best at everybody the majority of the time.
Terry, with this Baylor team, too, you talk about the strength of the Big 12, and Baylor's been a big part of that. Injuries, though, have hurt. Tyler Thomas, we haven't seen at full strength out there in the past, I'd say 3 weeks, almost a month. You're dealing with that, too, with Blake Helton now, who is out for the Big 12 tournament, most likely the entire thing. Cardozo Oquendo, haven't seen him here in a bit since Oklahoma State. Injury-wise and COVID-wise, everything all tied together, what Baylor are we seeing? This doesn't feel like the A1 Baylor.
No, this doesn't look like the same team that we were talking about 3 or 4 weeks ago. This is not the team that lost to TCU that were swept, but it's also not the team that came back and went 14-3 the next 17 games at home. So this has been one of those years where I'm not sure which is the real Baylor team. They're playing above their heads because they already did much more than they were even picked to do. So do you look at it and say, hey, this has still been a good season because of that? But realistically, what was the real Baylor team we were going to be seeing this year? Was it more of an average team, not playing above, not the bats getting as strong, pitching maybe not being as strong? I don't want to say that we've seen an average today. I think it's somewhere between the wins and somewhere between the losses. I think they're a really good middle team that played above their head more than they played below.
Well, Terry, they played above their head for so long. Those 4 straight weekends where they win conference series. You talked about the non-conference win streak that extended for so long early on in the season after a tough start to the year. And now you've got a squad that's just trying to get into the postseason. We asked an analyst yesterday, hey, ideally, which regional do you see Baylor going to? And they said any one of them. Just see your name called at this point to go to the postseason. When you look at the full body of work of this team, are they a postseason team?
Well, their RPI has dropped to 40 as of the 25th. 40 is getting a little bit deep, especially when you have as many Big 12 teams above that. But, yeah, if you take the season as a whole and you don't look at that one aspect, they're still a good at-large team. They really are. And we've seen them, again, go back to the TCU series where they got swept. They can turn around and go into the big tournament and scare some people because they have that ability. So I don't know if this is a bump in the road or if it's, again, getting back to what the team really is. But, man, the body of work, if you look at the highs and not necessarily focus on all of the lows, I think they should get in. I think they should get a bid, and they should scare some people what region they go to.
Well, Terry, if you're on the committee, whether it be the Tech win, that win streak, what are the things you're pointing at? Make a case right now for Baylor baseball, even if they lose today, to make it into the postseason.
The first thing you got to talk about is their home season record, their home record. They again, toward the end, they lost some. But I think you got to start with that. You've got to look at that. You've got to say that this team can put it together. No matter what you see with the pitching today, I think you got to look at the pitching staff too. You've got to look at the runs scored for this team. You've got to look that the majority of the time, even in their losses, they were still in the game. And you got to look at the wins they have. Again, you lose all 3 to TCU. With that in your mind, if Tech was the next weekend, that would make you go, well, we're probably going to lose 3 there. But they take 2, and you look at all the series that they ended up winning, not sweeping, but winning. You've got to look at that they're winning more than they're losing. Okay, they lost to Tech yesterday. Too bad it's not a series there, because I think they could turn around and beat Tech at least 1, maybe 2 games. Same thing with K-State. I think today, if you made it a 3-game series, Baylor would come back and take 2. So I think if you look at it from that standpoint, you've got to put them in somewhere. You've got to get them in. They're not a Cinderella team. I don't want to do that. And they're not just an underdog. They're a competitive team that would do well in a region.
Terry, from what you've seen, everything this season, Baylor coming together here in the tournament, I do want to kind of touch base with them being in Bricktown right now. How tough is it when you're not at full strength to go in and compete in a tournament like the monster that the Big 12 tournament is?
Well, again, we just talked about how the team is the the conference is so deep that there's no advantage to anyone. You go there, you're going to be facing everybody's best. And again, it takes just a couple of good innings and you're way above your head. It also just takes a couple of bad innings, and now you're just kind of like, oh, here we are again. If you've had that, that's where I worry about the confidence level, because Baylor's gone through that more in the last 2 weeks than anything else. They get up and then they get down. I don't know if it's a confidence level as much as like, oh man, we gotta fight again. How many emotional fights can you have before you just go, oh man, I'm just tired?
I think tournament scenario too. That's where a lot of these teams, it's make or break, because not a lot of sleep going on. You're up at 6 a.m. for a 9 a.m. game, and that's what Baylor's had to fight through the last 2 days. Now 2 outs here in the bottom of the 8th for the Bears, trailing 9-4. Terry, I mean, all of this wrapped together, I do want to note, now that Baylor's done with their home season, we haven't talked to you since they wrapped it up. I know that you love your job doing the PA, because I know I love mine, it's one of the most fun things in the world to get paid to talk about baseball.
Well, not to talk about it, but just watch baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever mislead announcing a batter in the box because you're just enjoying the game as a fan. I've done that. It's like, man, what a great hit. You're all excited, everything, and then they go, oh, the next batter's up.
Especially in the biggest moments, too. It's always when you forget them. That's the worst part. But, Terry, what's one thing for you that you'll take away from this past season that really was memorable or that stuck out?
All the freshmen and how they played great. There was one game, I'm sorry, I don't remember which one it was, but when you count the pitcher, we started six freshmen. Six freshmen, and they all played great. We win the game. I take out of the fact that we talked about this a few weeks ago. When one's down, it's next man up. Now you can do that for only so long. Again, COVID and injuries and things like that. But I am so excited because of the way the freshmen played. And the biggest takeaway, Jared McKenzie. Where did this guy come from? I mean, even today, just what he did. He knocked in the home run and then knocked in 2 more runs at a critical time to give them that early lead. I'm excited about the bats coming alive. It's kind of like a lot of teams go through. We got to get the pitching up there now.
Well, Terry, I got a Bear Games question of the day for you today, and it centers around Baylor baseball, and that's if you could play one position on one Baylor team any year, 2012, 2018, any of these years, which position would you play and on which Baylor team?
Wow, that's tough. Probably left field this year, because it's kind of been a round robin out there with some of the injuries and COVID, things like that. Because I would be out there and only have to make a few plays before I could pull because a better player went in. That's where I think that would be the place to start anyway.
You heard it here first. Terry Hunt is playing left field just so he can go out as soon as possible and Baylor can find a new left fielder. That's the most
real left fielder out there, yes.
I think that's the best cop-out answer we'll get all day today.
You are so welcome.
Terry, I want to thank you for coming on the show as always and talking Baylor baseball today. Hopefully they can get some late magic going on here in this one, but even if not, man, fingers crossed we see him in a regional.
You bet. Fingers crossed. Everybody's going to be watching the selection time and see what happens with that. And, I mean, this has not been a bad year for any of the sports at Baylor. When you look at what tennis is doing now, you look at men's basketball, women's basketball, A&T, softball, baseball, even soccer. I mean, it's been fun. It's been good. And we're building a lot of good foundations.
Across the board. Terry, thank you again. A pleasure.
You bet. Always fun. Thanks, sir.
Again, that's Terry Hunt, the Baylor Baseball PA public address announcer. We'll be joined at 12 o'clock by Troy Montemayor. I want to make a case right now. I mean, we're looking at Baylor Baseball